Do you live in a world filled with corporate data? Are you plagued by siloed departments? Are your lackluster growth strategies demolishing your chances for success? Are you held captive by the evil menace, Lord Lack? Lack of time, lack of strategy, and lack of the most important and powerful tool in your superhero tool belt, knowledge. Never fear, HubHeroes. Get ready to don your cape and mask, move into action, and become the Hub Hero your organization needs. Tune in each week to join the League of Extraordinary Inbound Heroes as we help you educate, empower, and execute. HubHeroes, it's time to unite and activate your powers.
Just remember, if you're lacking a better transition into the intro, this is not the show for you.
Yeah, we just jump right in, we get going. But I'm super excited because, listen, at the end of the day, there's something that's been going around in my brain for, gosh, maybe 2 years now, for sure the last year and a half. And it's something that I want to do. It's something that I've kind of been doing. And listen, sometimes I probably do more than I think I do. And I have my own crisis when it comes to like how much content I should create or how many events I should do, but listen, we do events. We do super admin training. That's 10 weeks. We do it probably 2 to 3 times a year. We do podcasts. That's an event, right? And that's every week that we're doing one, if not 2 So, but also you start to think about webinars and you think about in-person and events, right? I've just been thinking about growth-led companies, event-led growth, if you will. And so I'm excited to have, which, by the way, let me ask you, is there another events app in the app ecosystem, or do I literally have the only 2 events app humans on the podcast today?
What's event integrations?
Well, yeah, but I'm not going to go reach out.
That's mostly why me and Justin's, little event babies exist, because integrations are terrible.
Well, George, let's just say this: there's other event platforms, but I don't know why you'd want to waste your time on them.
Yeah, I'm probably not reaching out to Eventbrite. I'm not reaching out to Eventbrite and asking them to be on the podcast. I'm just going to say that because, I'm just going to say that. But
there is one more. There is one more by something operations, Andrew's company. He does. He's got like a little utility for
marketing events.
Events object. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. There's one more. At least one more.
I saw that. Oh gosh.
You know what I'm talking about, Justin,
I do know
right?
what you're talking about.
I feel like a jerk not remembering the name of his company. It's like Go Operations or something like that.
We'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, we'll find it.
Put it in the show notes. We'll find it.
There's other people fighting a good fight out there. Okay.
And that's good. I think it is a good fight, by the way. And by the way, I want anybody that's watching this on LinkedIn live or listening to the podcast, in the near future when we release it, probably like Tuesday afternoon, or maybe it's like 6 months after this because you're just stumbling across the podcast. What's wrong with you? Where you been? Come listen to us. We love creating content for you.
Where are you,
folks? But I want everybody to know this isn't just another conversation about events. I'm hoping that we can kind of redefine how people think about them. Because listen, I'm to the point where it's like, it's not optional. We've got to be doing this. Events are probably the cornerstone, especially if you're recording the video, because then you can do what I like to call, which is content confetti, literally turn the events into blog articles, into social posts, into all sorts of stuff. But let me back up. Max, most of the humans know who you are, but I'm going to swing back over to you in a second because we're going to shine a different kind of light on you this morning. But Justin, I'm going to start with you because if we're talking about events, maybe not all the Hub Heroes folks know who you are. So just give us a lowdown of kind of who you are, what you do, a little bit about the app that you bring to the table this morning during the conversation, and maybe just like your fundamental 30-second spot on what you think about events and organizations using events.
Yeah. So my name is Justin Givens. I am the creator and the founder of Simple Events, and also the co-founder of a company named Image in a Box. It is a HubSpot platinum agency at the time of this recording, and it is a agency that just loves to solve people's problems, more specifically in the ERP realm of ConnectWise and cybersecurity companies. That is who we really love to help on the agency side. But where we find the biggest passion is running events. And that's why we built Simple Events. It was a journey we started on 2 years ago. It's the number 2 event platform in HubSpot. It's going to be number 1. I'm just waiting on y'all to sign up for it. Okay. There is a freebie out there for it. So it's the easiest and fastest way to get your events integrated into HubSpot, and the simplest. And you get to use all the wonderful tools in HubSpot that you love and use every single day. One of the big things that I want to say about events is that we all do them wrong. Yeah. I'm just going to drop the mic because when's the last time you signed up for your own company's event and felt like an external user and see what the process feels like? So many people have gone and said, why aren't these people showing up? Oh, I put in so much effort into this event, and they're like, all right, cool. I didn't get any return on investment. Well, that's not the customers that show up, the prospect's fault. That's our fault that we're not running the event the way you should be running events. So that's my little spiel that we're going to dive into more.
I feel like we're going to dive a little bit deeper into that as we go. And by the way, I'm also sitting here as you're like the number 2 event app. I'm like, oh, did I just create a room for chaos? Like, am I going to be the referee of a boxing match before this whole thing is over? Anyway, I hope not. Maybe so. It might be good for ratings.
Apps got to stick together, bro.
That's right. I think we cross share more because I'm like, y'all need to do Event Happily. That's exactly what it's for. Let's do it.
Yeah. So Max, people know you for being the, lovable teddy bear, huggable, HubHeroes host. But today we'll shine the light on you as far as Event Happily. So just kind of introduce yourself from that side of things, like who you are, what you do on that, and a little bit about maybe how you think about events.
Yeah. Well, I guess, hey, everybody who doesn't know me, I'm Max. I'm the chief evangelist over at this company called Happily. All we do is we build apps on HubSpot that make HubSpot do more. Is, I guess, the easiest way to think about kind of what we do. We've got an app called Event Happily. It's the whole goal of it is essentially to look at HubSpot as a platform, figure out where all the missing puzzle pieces are in terms of event management, and to fill those gaps and literally turn HubSpot into an event management platform. And that's kind of like basically what I do. And, part of my, role here is, mostly I create a lot of content. I'm super loud on LinkedIn and I work with a lot of HubSpotters to get them up to speed on the stuff we build, because we do Event Happily, we do Quote Happily, we got a bunch of utility apps. There's a lot of really cool stuff we got planned in the future. But I've been kind of the one sort of like guiding the direction for what we're sort of calling Event Happily 2.0, which is really the sort of next evolvement, the next iteration of Event Happily in its current state. I guess in terms of like what I think about events is, like, it's so interesting because everything that people do with events touches everything that HubSpot's really good at, right? It's a function of marketing. It's a functioning of sales. It can be a functioning of customer service, right? And so forever and ever, as a, someone who helped people implement HubSpot, right? Events were always a topic, and HubSpot was never good at being able to handle it because it's a CRM system. It's not built to be event management software, right? And for so long, I just remember people saying like, oh, we want to be able to sign people up for events and do this and do that. But, a lot of the native stuff built into HubSpot just wasn't built to handle it, whether it comes to the way that forms work out of the box and, doing a ton of list management and all this other crazy stuff. But in like events are important. And like the biggest thing that I've kind of learned is that no one does event management in the same exact way, right? And events mean different things to different people, right? An event could be a conference. An event could be an internal training or some sort of course someone's running or some sort of, like a webinar, things like that. And the nuances that come along with how complex people manage their events can be are vast. And I think like the really big opportunity, that there is of building an event management platform on HubSpot is like HubSpot has a lot of the things that other like point solutions for event management tools don't have already in there, right? So like when Justin was saying earlier, right, getting all your data into HubSpot so you can use all those awesome tools that HubSpot has, like that's the point. And like what's really, really neat about it is since event management is so complex to nuance, or can be super complex, super nuanced, and really different in the way people execute it, right? What's great about building an event app on HubSpot is that you can build in kind of like what's missing, and then you can use HubSpot's, wild amount of extensibility and customization to fill in all of like the unique and nuanced parts of your event management strategy or process, whatever that may be, right? Through workflows, record customizations, additional custom objects, all these other things, depending on what you're trying to do, right? So, it's cool. It's a cool platform to build on. And I think there's a million other things besides events you could apply the same logic to probably.
Yeah.
Oh, without a doubt. I love that it could be a simple event, pun intended, or a complex event. But at the end of the day, you're going to be able to do it happily. Or anyway, you saw what I tried to do.
Seemed really forced, George.
Here's the thing. I'll get rid of my bad dad jokes and puns for a hot minute. If I think about when most people think about events, they probably think about old school webinars, right? And so, Justin, I'm going to go to you first, and then maybe Max back to you, and I might throw some pennies in the pool here as well. But when you think of like old school, purpose of events kind of evolving from, networking or promotion or just downright bad webinars and sales, like right there, to more of this like driving maybe lead generation or starting conversations or actually being human and building relationships, the idea of like event-led growth. What does this shift mean to businesses? Like what should they be thinking about today?
So every event should have a goal. And I'm going to go ahead and say that not every event should be closing a new customer. So you should have a process. There's this little thing called a flywheel, that you got to promote.
Oh, I've heard of that. I think.
Yeah. I don't know if anybody on this podcast has ever heard of it.
What's that company?
Inbound is dead.
That's not the company name, just so no one goes.
An ebook about how Inbound is dead.
So when you go into the thinking, hey, I'm going to do this webinar. Hey, I'm going to do this in-person event. One, who's your target? Always going in. But when you think about it from a goal for that, is it to drive awareness? Is it to drive leads? Is it to drive sales? Is it to close sales? But you got to think, if I'm building one event, let's just say you've never run an event or you've run 1,000 events and you're going into that event today and you're thinking, okay, I need to run an event for say 2 months from now. If you're thinking I'm going to drive new leads and I'm going to close existing leads, you're probably thinking of your event completely wrong. Because just like, as we all know, those buyers are at different stages in your process. Don't speak to them like they're brand new to your business. Don't speak to them like they've known your business for 6 years. So create your events that are really tailored to your buyer's journey and where they are in that stage, so you can really maximize that effort, that return on investment. And the biggest thing that I see a lot of companies do is, oh, we're going to run events. Yeah. And then they're like, we got no customers. And they go through this process and it happens every year. You know what? We're going to do more events this year. And they always fail because they're not thinking, hey, that lead, now how can I use HubSpot in a workflow to nurture that lead into a long-term customer, right? They're thinking this event should close them. We used to run pre-COVID a training series every quarter. And my goal was to convert. If you came to one in the first quarter of the year, by the fourth quarter, I wanted to convert you as a customer, right?
Long-term travel.
Take me a year, right? Now, it only took me 45 minutes for the talk. So if you think that time investment, right, doesn't cost a lot of me, but I knew going in, I'm going to stage my content, to elevate that person the whole way into a buyer. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's where I feel like a lot of people think about events wrong. Then they go and use the wrong tools, which then makes that friction. And they're like, we're not running events. We're just going to go back to doing what we've always done.
Yeah, because then you end up getting sloppy in the way that you use that data after the event too. Because what are you doing? Just
you print Excel sheets, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Ooh, we'll get into friction and failure here in a hot minute. But Max, I want you to kind of go in the same direction of what do businesses need to be thinking about right now when it comes to events?
Yeah. Well, I mean, on top of everything that Justin said, because I completely agree with it and I love him. I think the other thing too, and George, I think you've been really good at kind of championing this idea, is that not every event that you run has to be something that's going to get you leads, right? And close deals. There's a big reason why you'd want to invest in strengthening your community of customers, right? Think about why HubSpot is where it's at today. It's all because of HubSpot Academy and things like Inbound and the rabid fan base and community that they've relentlessly built over the past 15 whatever years, right? I'm not out here saying every single company needs to go do their own version of Inbound, right? But the big thing that you can tell works, right, is that HubSpot invests in its strengthening and fortification of its community and its user base, right? Events are an amazing way to do that because you can bring people together over the shared love of a product or a service or an industry or whatever, get them talking and really, really spin up that, base of evangelists that you have when you do, when you come up with like creative and fun ways of engaging with that community, and events are like a wonderful way to do that, be it virtual or in person or meetups, or, HubSpot does the user groups, like things like this. Right. And obviously you need an operating system to be able to like handle that stuff. Right. HubSpot's great at doing that. Right. As long as it's paired with the right tools, like the two that we're talking about today. Right. So I think I think a big mistake, Justin really hit it right on the head. Is like just looking at it as like a lead gen and a deal closing tool is the wrong way to look at it, right? You want to be able to, you got to know that there's other tactical reasons to deploy it, right? Like even when we talk about Inbound, we talk about delight, right? Delight is so important. Fortifying your customer base and creating evangelists and getting people stoked on your stuff in ways that don't always necessarily translate to a very specific transaction of money or closing a new deal. All these things are important because they affect that stuff down the line and have an impact on it, right? And events are a great way to, engage that base of fans that you have of, the work your company does, right? So don't sleep on it.
Yeah. So I love that I'm sitting here talking to you two gentlemen, and it really is about like these apps that help you set up, launch, and like create, and then report, and then nurture based on the events you're putting on. The thing that comes to my mind, what people should be thinking about, businesses should be thinking about, is with apps like yours, it becomes a lot easier. And so the excuses go away. Here's the thing that I'm going to throw into this mix, but before I do, if you're watching this live, put in the chat pane if you do events and what type of events you do. Just throw it in the chat pane real quick, because I'm super curious what people are considering or thinking about in events.
And even if you don't, just lie to us. We need the boost in the algorithm.
No lie. Truthful. Put in the chat.
Lie.
Do you do events and what type of events? Here's the thing. Excuses are a thing of the past, or should be, when it comes to events, because the other thing that I want to put in people's mind outside of HubSpot, outside of these apps, is if you're not using AI for research, you're failing. If you're not using AI for presenter notes, you're probably maybe spending more time than you need to. If you're not using AI for creative ideas of what should be on the actual slides for your event, like what I'm talking about is human-powered ideas and creation, but AI assisted. Because you can spin around a deck for an event in a heartbeat at this point in time if you know the right tools like Gamma to use. And by the way, not sponsored. Could be. Gamma. Reach out. Let us know if you want to sponsor the podcast. But it's one of my favorite like presentation creation applications. Just because of the way that it leverages AI and AI imagery and all the stuff that you can do with it. But so like I want people to rethink about that portion of events as well as the portions that we're talking about in HubSpot and with Simple Events and Event Happily. But here's the thing. We've all signed up for those events. Many of us has said, well, we're not going to attend. We're just going to watch the replay. Anyway, not why we're here. But we've signed up for these events. We thought we were going to get value. We get to the event and it's like, or just flat out, like you're like, man, I've been here for 20 minutes. I'm checking out. This sucks. I'm curious. You guys are doing events. You're focused on events. You see people doing events. You're helping others. You're enabling them to do events. What are some actionable steps that brands, organizations can take to kind of make sure that their event delivers on the promises of truly positioning, the company as a thought leader, fostering relationships with the attendees, getting people to stick around? Like, is there like a checklist? Is there like, here's the things you should always think about doing? Like, talk us through that.
Max, you want to dive first?
Well, I mean, let's be honest. I build an event app that is built from the ground for HubSpot. I'm not an event producer by any means, right? So I'm the last guy you want to talk to in terms of like what makes a great event from a very tactical level. I guess the one thing that I would say is don't do the bait and switch, guys, right? Don't do the Staples. Hey, you want 5 free nights at the hotel? All you got to do is come listen to a seminar on this timeshare. Unless you're advertising it as a sales pitch, right? Which some people are going to be interested in that. Sure, you're going to have people that are, in their buying cycle of whatever product that you have. And sometimes they go, yeah, you know what? I'd like to listen to someone actually talk about the product and show it and create an open forum for questions and things like that. That's great. As long as you're saying this is what that is, and if you're interested in consuming that content, here it is. The last thing you want to do is bamboozle people with some sort of bait and switch and say, hey, come learn about XYZ, topic, and then it ends up being like a sales pitch webinar that people just kind of tune out from and go, oh, I just see what they're trying to do, right? Also, right, be a little bit more nuanced with the way that you follow up with people after these things, right? Not everyone needs a salesperson sicked on them, right? So I would say, try to do your best to, really make sure if you are going to do the sales heavy content types of events that they're advertised as such, not only so you're, doing the right thing and being transparent and not wasting people's time with a bait and switch, but also so you can actually attract the people that want to see that. You got a much better shot at getting the right eyeballs on that type of content. Right. But I did do new hire training, right, at HubSpot for a while, especially during COVID. Had to learn how to do that pretty quick. And in terms of like, if you are a company that's doing like virtual events, the biggest thing that you have to figure out somehow, and this is going to be different at every single type of event. So like, I apologize if this, advice is vague, but creating an element that is interactive whenever you're doing any sort of visual event is huge when it comes to maintaining people's engagement, right? So however you can do that, right? Let's say you're doing a webinar or some other type of virtual event, you got to figure out what are the interactive elements that are going to make people not just a passive watcher, right? And an active participant, right? That's what makes virtual events really good. In-person events, I don't know, just make sure you got like a good spread or something. You know what I mean? I don't know. I'm not an in-person event coordinator, right? So there's probably someone who could comment better than me than that, right? But, make sure the content of the event, whatever it may be, matches the audience. Don't do a bait and switch. Make sure it's valuable, right? And then just don't murder people with sales folks right after. Just let them go, oh, that was a good event and I learned something, right? And it wasn't just a ploy to get me to buy some shit, right?
Yeah. So, by the way, for all of you people on LinkedIn, or if you're listening to this in the future, hit us up. Let us know either in the chat pane or in the HubHeroes community. Have you ever felt like you've been sicked on by salespeople after an event? Have you ever had to live that experience? Also, by the way, that was my way of making this event interactive. See what I just did there? Because I got them to do something.
There you go.
Awesome.
I got the humans to do something. So Justin, your turn. Like, where does your mind go on this question? By the way, after you go, I have some thoughts, and thanks to Max, I have a couple extra thoughts.
Extra thoughts. There you go. Yeah. So one of the big things is, why are you running this event? Okay. So what information do you want to present that the consumer is going to ingest, right? And where a lot of businesses that I've seen that we've helped with, they try to cram way too much. Okay. So this sort of goes back off what Max was saying, is know your target audience and know what they want, right? But don't give them everything in 45 minutes where they're just glazed over and they're like, I have no idea what to do. Another great idea is create uniqueness for those who actually attend. Meaning, you want the recording, you've got to show up, right? Add these sort of checks and balances, just like the timeshare. To get the free nights, you just don't show up on property. You have to listen. Do the same concept and be clear about that. We're only going to send the recordings to those who show up. All right. And one of the tricks that I really love to do, it's not tricks, it's a tactic, is I tell them at the beginning, don't try to take any notes. I'm going to be asking you to be interactive. I'm going to be asking questions throughout this presentation. I'm going to show you how you can get all these slides. And at that moment, you're removing that barrier of somebody feels like they missed something and they just leave, to giving you actually full attention, because they know that fear of missing details is now removed.
Yep.
Okay.
True. Locks them in.
That is a huge win for virtuals. Now, in persons, you need to pick out 5 to 10 people and call them out every time you're going through and asking this interaction, right? And I usually say, hey, I'm going to call you out if you don't raise your hands. And I do that with a big smile, like, hey, you're here to learn. Let's have a conversation. All right. People can hide behind on a virtual wall pretty easily, but you can do the awkward silence. I don't know if anybody here is a big salesperson, but you can always mute and wait for those crickets. All right. So that big thing is knowing the target, knowing what to get. The other thing is, a lot of marketing teams come up with ideas of events and those kind of things, but they remove that disconnect from the sales team. Going back to the sales team and saying, what's every question you've ever had? Not that every question is going to be in every webinar, but you can pick out a collection of similar topics and address those, and then answer during the presentation, and then move on to the next series. So then what you're doing is building that knowledge and that trust with those customers. One of the last thing I'm going to say is, if you think you've communicated your event enough, you haven't. So I tell my wife this all the time. The moment my wife thinks she has plenty of time to get ready, that's the moment we're going to be late. No matter if it's 2 hours, 30 minutes, 15 hours, the moment she says, oh, we got plenty of time, we're late, honey. That's it. We haven't even left the house.
Yeah. Let me know how the doghouse is later, bro.
No, she laughs every time. And she actually said it on Saturday. She goes, I was telling myself I got plenty of time. I'm like, yeah. And she goes, yeah, you're right. I was behind. But when you think you've communicated, so I was actually talking to a simple eventer. That's another word I've made up. And they said, a lot of people aren't using the QR code. And I'm like, well, are you telling them about the QR code? Well, not really.
Well,
how do you expect them to know to use it if you're not telling them? Again, you've got to remind your people who sign up, who haven't signed up. And again, this is why Event Happily and Simple Events are so tightly integrated with HubSpot. Use the list functions. Use your workflows to keep bringing them notifications until they actually register, and then flip them into the registration workflow. So then they actually show up. And during that time, bringing in exactly what you're going to talk about and why they need to join and the nuggets you're going to give them, right? I typically keep my talking points to 4 or less. And during those 4, I always have a transformation story that can relate to one of my buyer personas because I want to create that connection between the customer. At the end of it, there's always something free, but and I even cut, like George says, you turn these webinars, these digital ones, into ongoing content. I cut the promotion part of the free content for the web. You only get it if you show up. All right. So those are my tips there to really maximize your event.
Yeah, I love it. There's a couple things that I'll add based on the answers that you gave. One, Max, as soon as you started to go, I was like, well, Max is part of the answer because, bro, you always bring energy. Like, you're just who you are. You're authentic and you're loud and you're Max and you're like, you're energized. And so many events I've got on, and it's like listening to Charlie Brown's teacher. And you're like, Merry Christmas. And so, like, just one thing is bring the energy. Justin, you said that I like to share a transformational story. The fact that many people aren't using storytelling as a superpower when it comes to the events that they're creating is shameful. And here's the thing.
Trouble.
Not every event that you do has to be recorded. Even saying that in the promotion of it makes it a different type of event. We do an event for an organization that I help called Lifestar. They help solopreneurs. We do an event called Problem Solvers, and we don't let note takers in, and we don't record it. Because it's the type of event that you got to show up, be you, be human, and talk about the problems in your business and let people help you solve them. So you can't just register and then get it later. So like figuring out the strategy that's right for you and your event, figuring out the stories that you want to tell along the way and bringing the energy for it all. So that if people actually get captivated and get taken away and like enjoy the 30, 45, whatever minutes of the event, you add that and you'll be doing a lot better. Here's the funny thing I want to swing back around to is we've mentioned about like being, sick in the sales on people. And we've talked about not being salesy. And we've almost like leaned into this like negative vibe of sales attached to events. But I'm going to come back to you both because I want to know if there's some steps, some ways, some mindsets, some best practices that we could actually turn these events into high performing sales machines and really streamline the process to go from conversation starters and relationship builders to what CEOs and CFOs and CMOs and anybody with a C and some O's in their title probably really care about, which is closing deals, revenue, and staying in business. Like where does your brain go when it's like, yeah, we like to yell about sales, but here's some things you could think about as far as the process.
It's okay to have salesy events, right? It's just about making sure the right people are the audience for that, right? Like we talked about, for years, we've talked about the whole buyer's journey and top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel content. The big problem is people were only focusing on the bottom of the funnel content, right?
Always.
Only focus on the stuff where it's like, this is why our product is so great, right? And,
what's your product?
Yeah, exactly. But that's the thing. There are people that are in the mindset of, I am trying to consume content about why your product is so great. That's okay. You can have these very sales-focused events for those people. Like, not everything has to be this esoteric, top of the funnel, educational, storytelling stuff, right? You need to do that 100% because the amount of people that are looking for your sales-focused content is generally this big at all times, but the people looking for ways to solve the general goals and challenges that they have that don't even know that they have a problem that your product sells for is this big at all times, right? Because you're talking about the rest of the world or the rest of your total addressable market that doesn't know who you are yet, right? And like, yes, you need to be creating content for this, but it is okay to create content for the people that are just like, oh yeah, I know that I have a problem and I know that I need to solve it using this type of solution. And I am evaluating all the people that solve the problem in that way. I'd like to learn more about your stuff. way, but do it in a way that's not reading another ebook, looking at your website's product features. Like people do enjoy places they can go to ask very pointed questions about specific products, right? But not also be dragged into a one-on-one sales call. Right? No, everyone likes to do everything they can. At least I do. Like to do everything I can to avoid that. That's my last, generally going to be my last step is like, all right, I need to get on the phone with a salesperson, right? But, some sort of like open forum where I can go and learn about the product. I can ask questions. I can interact kind of as much as I want. And then I can choose if I disengage afterwards and kind of disappear and ghost, right? It's okay to do that, I think, as long as you're presenting the content that way. You're being very clear who the audience is for. You're making it very easy for them to find. And in that case where someone's showing up to quite literally learn about your product, it's kind of okay that you sick the salespeople on them after, right? Relatively to what you're doing to other people that came to learn about some topic you tried to educate them on, and all of a sudden they're getting just absolutely shellacked by salespeople in their inbox after. That's a totally different. That's a bait and switch. We don't want to do the bait and switch.
Yeah. You did really well. I thought there was something else coming there. You did well.
Hold on. I'm gonna piggyback off that, because when you run your event, the last thing you want to do is give your sales team, and I see this all the time, 30 leads who never raised their hand.
True.
To sales. Because guess what? Sales is going to tell VP of sales, hey, tell marketing to stop doing this. They're wasting all of our time. All right. Then marketing's going to be like, no, we're going to do more. Stop. But you've got to think about in your events, what's going to generate the hand raisers? That goes back to what we were talking earlier on this show is what's that interactivity of one, think about your qualification questions. And I'm going to play it on my side as, well, how many events do you run? One, not a customer. Just use Excel. You're fine. Okay. Mm-hmm. Oh, you run 20. Awesome. In person, virtual. Great. Do you run your own conference show? Check out Event Happily. We don't do conferences, right? I can then funnel people the right way. And guess what? That makes yourself look good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Instead of always saying, you need me, right? Find what makes those hand raisers go, ooh, ooh, ooh. Because as Max said, the last thing someone wants is to disrupt their day right after a webinar, and you have 15 missed phone calls from an unknown phone number.
Yep.
Right.
Because also, like, if you run events, it's more than likely you run multiple events and you want people to come back to them and you want people to go, that was a great experience, right? Not go, I went to this one event and now they will not stop hounding me. Those guys, I'm not going to go to another one. I'm not going to listen. They broke my trust. That's not what you're trying to do. Events is all about community building and giving people an alternate way to interact with you if we're talking about the sales process type events or the sales funnel type events, right? It's not just about, yeah, we got you. And now you're never going to stop listening, like hearing. Right? It's not about that. But unfortunately, that's what people do, right? They just go, oh, we need a webinar to get some leads. And then we're going to just, just go after these people relentlessly. It's like, bro, no.
Max,
no.
I'm so happy with you right now. That was a great use of the censor button, by the way.
No swears are.
It was a great use of that. Since we're on LinkedIn Live, Justin, that was honestly one of my biggest worries of doing LinkedIn Live is like historically we've been able to edit certain humans and what they say on the podcast, but LinkedIn Live, I was like, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to do this. So good job, Max. I love this conversation. I want to dive kind of a little bit into each one of the apps a little bit. Justin, I'm going to come back to you. Then I'm going to go Max to you because I want to think about like simple events and kind of like the essential elements of creating these seamless, no fuss event experiences that can deliver real results, for attendees and businesses doing this. Like, just walk us through kind of that process, that mindset from the simple event standpoint for us.
Yeah. So the biggest thing is Simple Events' motto is we want to get you back to marketing your event. setting up your event, like building it on Eventbrite or any other platform that requires an hour, 2 hours, it's going to slow you down. It's going to deter you. It's going to keep that freshness from flowing, or and even the creativity from flowing from marketing side, right? We all need more time to market so we can attract the right people for this event. Okay. So the philosophy there is we've got HubSpot. And if you're on HubSpot Starter, if you're on one of the free plans in HubSpot, you're really missing out on the value of HubSpot Marketing Pro. And that is specifically because of the landing page features. Mm-hmm. When you're running your event, you should always go out with an A/B test. It should be quick. You should know exactly what you're testing, very small test. Run that quick test and then pick your winner once you have a good amount of traffic to it. Then now you've got that running. Because again, within simple events, you're clicking 5 minutes, your event's set up, you've got a registration form, you can start funneling people into this. Now, where a lot of people need to have that next mindset is after they register, now what? So to create this seamless, perfect experience and something that's repeatable, again, this is why we integrate so tightly with HubSpot, and it's the only platform we integrate with. We want you to take those registrants or those people who have registered and now nurture them. Hey, we're so excited. Oh, by the way, here's a video from Max. He's super stoked that you're actually registered. Create that personalization. There's so many tools to create these awesome, unique one-to-one videos. Add that flair of your business. So go back to say, who are we and how do we talk to these people? If you're cold, stiffy, and boring, your emails are going to come across that way. So think about that from that standpoint. Then when you go into that registration, all right, cool, we got you. Now, be upfront. We're going to remind you 16 times about the event just so you're aware, right? We don't want you to miss it because it's going to solve, and we're going to highlight and give away. We're going to do, what are you going to do during that event? Be clear and upfront and repeat that. Give them the tools that they're used to, calendar invites, calendar links, so they can actually add it and they're not forgetting when the event is. Okay. Then after the event, you've got to have a post process. And it's not to say fire over to the sales team. You only do that for those that are the hand raisers. You then nurture them and say, hey, we really hope you enjoyed it. By the way, here's our calendar page for the next upcoming events. Or, hey, you can go get a free X. You can go do Y. Give them something else to do. Even if it's like, hey, post this on social media. Engage them, because those promoters, as Max said earlier, you don't know where they are. They could be somebody who's looking at your product for somebody else who asked them about that product. And they just had the time because they're intrigued about it, right? So think about it from not just up into the event. Think about post-event. How can we put them into a newsletter if you had that on your registration form? Hey, yes, send me the newsletter. Awesome. Send a personalized message from the speaker. Thank you, George, for hosting. This is George. I really thank you, man, for showing up. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, just hit a reply. Like, you don't have to be salesy. That's what if it was a sales presentation, make it salesy. But if it's not, just be like, hey, I'm here to ask any non-confrontational question. You have a one-to-one message with me now. All right.
Yeah. It's interesting because as I hear you talk, Justin, I'm like, you mean you care and you pay attention to detail along the way, and you understand and you create some type of journey, whether it's the communication journey or it's the next event journey. Like, there's just so much you can pull out of what you're talking about. It's funny too, because you literally reminded me of one of the things that I have to do when we're done recording here is I'm speaking at an event in March, and they asked me to do a minute to minute and a half teaser video of the fact that we're going to be talking about AI and getting AI to have empathy and heart and how they can really so even that way before video that can go out and get them excited about it. Max, let's pay attention to detail, people. Max, let's flip over to you. This is from the Event Happily standpoint. I want you to kind of walk us through how Event Happily can transform the way businesses manage events. and maybe even some like special advantages that it offers. Justin was talking about like calendar links. I know he has a module that goes into HubSpot emails that like makes that easy. But talk us through Event Happily and just the awesomeness that it's there for people.
Yeah, I mean, so the way that we kind of think about it is, again, I kind of alluded to this at the beginning, is like we really looked at HubSpot as a platform. And we said like, hey, what are the missing pieces that HubSpot's really not good at, right, when it comes to trying to manage an event top to bottom on the HubSpot platform, right? And what it really kind of came down to, well, I mean, it came down to a lot of different things, but one, there's a big data structure problem, right? Like, for example, so we have something called a registrant object, right? And a registrant object is basically a representation of someone registering for a specific event. Right. And what's really tough with a lot of the event integrations that are out there is they do a really bad job at managing this concept of that time Max went to inbound, right? And having a representation of that data and then managing that object, right? I mean, and people weren't really doing this or other event, integrations for point solution platforms weren't doing this. Mostly what they were doing was just shoving information, right, into contact properties. And what's really tough about that is it becomes very, very difficult to manage lists, to build reporting, to have, the concept of an event get connected to other things in your platform that it's impacting, such as deals and things like that. And it's really, really difficult to manage it because that crucial piece of the data is not tangible and touchable and usable and customizable, right? So, with us, there's in the 2.0 version of Event Happily, we have 3 objects. We've got events, we've got sessions, which are like parts of events, right? And then we have these registrant objects, right? And the registrant object really kind of serves as that representation of that time Max went to inbound, right? And so all of these things work together to create a data structure that's very easy to use to get really granular reporting, create whatever sort of automation you want around it, right? Build calculated properties in the way that all these things touch and connect to each other so you can drive other processes, right? Which is useful if your, events are way past just like virtual sales webinars, but if you're doing things like lead capture at trade shows, right? Or you're doing doing more like training courses, right? Instead of it being a marketing motion, it's more of like the product that you actually, sell as a company, right? If it's education or something like that, right? But really kind of what we did is we said, what can we do to build in the missing pieces or like an event engine, if you will, for the HubSpot architecture, right? And a lot of that came down to, one, making sure all the nuanced parts of your data when it comes to your event management strategy can be well represented, customized, right? And that's like, having an event record so you can plan and coordinate the event and, talk to each other through notes and tasks and, have an object to report on, right? And to connect other stuff to. It came down to building the sessions thing in, whether you're doing a cohort of training courses that last, X amount of weeks, or you're doing a more... Yep. Or you're doing like a more complex event that has breakout sessions or different tracks people can go down, right? It's really easy to kind of build that data structure. And then, of course, the registrant object, which holds the historical data of people registering for your events, but also acts as like a really good workflow trigger mechanism, right? And you can do other really cool stuff like use fields on registrant objects to collect, feedback on specific events people go to, right? Because the surveys tool is not really great at doing that and connecting all the data back to each other, right? So one of it was like a data structure issue. The next piece comes down to how do you actually like manage registrations. Like registrations are complex, especially if you have different data you're collecting each time for each event that you're doing, right? It might be t-shirt size at this event. It might be dietary restrictions at another. It might be some sort of combination of that, right? But also like managing that takes a lot of heavy lifting and compute power, right? Like, and complex workflows. You know, I mean, I don't think you can really do it that well out of the box if you're not doing some sort of custom coded solution. But like, you know, there needs to be something to say, all right, when someone signs up for an event, which event is it for? And if someone just signs up for a session at that event, how do we make sure that we're just tacking it onto that registration versus creating a new one? How are we managing duplicates? How are we doing all this heavy lifting in the background to make sure that like registrant data is tracked properly, right? So we had to build a bunch of automation and a whole new like logic engine in the background to like really kind of manage all that stuff, right? But then it also comes down to how are you driving registration, especially for an event that you're hosting, right? Because there's really sort of like two sort of sides of the way we think about event management. There's I'm hosting and producing events. And then there's my team goes to a lot of events. We call that like the attending use case, right? And those motions are totally different. If you're hosting events, you care about driving registration and you care about tracking attendance. And then you probably care about deal attribution to some extent because deals are another big thing in HubSpot, right? Or at least a lot of people care about it.
We hope
marketing attribution is fake and we all made it up, but still people like to do that. Right? But then there's also we attend events. So we don't care about doing pre-registration because it's not our event. We're going to go spend 40 grand to go put a booth at like Inbound or something like that on the cheap end, right? And what we're doing is we're going to go to the event. We're going to showcase our stuff. We're going to meet a bunch of people, but we're going to capture leads and have conversations with people.
Hopefully you're capturing leads.
Hopefully, right? But like, and what's great about it is that when you get all this stuff into HubSpot in a way that makes sense, because the data structure makes sense, then it makes it much easier for you to report on those efforts, tie those to influences to like revenue that you're hopefully closing because you met this person at the event or they went to the event or something like that, right? So we had to build, you know, especially on the hosted side, a whole bunch of things that really make up for HubSpot's lacking in this area. Like, I don't know if anyone, I mean, Justin, I'm sure you know this. HubSpot forms are dog shit when it comes to event registration. I'm sorry, they just are. And that's fine because that's not what they're built for.
Right. And I'm going to throw out the HubSpot engineer told me HubSpot's not built for real-time registration.
Not built for registrations. It's built for lead capture, right? And so there's a lot of stuff we had to do to account for that. And like the most very simple, you know, reasoning behind that is like, look at the way HubSpot forms work. It's actually brilliant in the way that they do cookie tracking. And it's like, all right, if someone fills out a form and, you know, they're on the same IP address and they give a different email, well, they must be giving us a new email. So like we update the contact record correctly, right? But what happens when you run events? Someone goes there and signs up 12 of their friends to go to the event. And then you go, why do I only have one contact? Well, it's because it's overwriting it over and over and over and over, right? And never mind doing multi-person registration on HubSpot forums and doing the whole conditional stuff and things like that. So like we had to build a whole bunch of like CMS modules to not only like manage more complex use cases for using HubSpot forms for event registration, but then it's like, how do you keep track of like the attendance, right? And how do you do all that kind of stuff? And how do you manage people signing up for multiple sessions at an event? Things like that. So like we built all these like missing pieces, right? That like, it's some of the craziest CMS engineering I've ever seen in HubSpot in terms of like functionality, right? And what we do with forms and listing modules and like all this other stuff. But we kind of build it so you could do as much as you can on HubSpot and really kind of get around some of these, you know, shortcomings that HubSpot has when it comes to the event management motion, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a lot of that stuff.
Love it. So as we close up, because dang on time flies when you're having fun, and this event has
we had like another half hour. This is a good one.
This event has been a blast. We could probably talk about this all day, to be honest with you, because there's so much that could go into this. Usually I like to ask, like, what's one tip? I'm not going to ask for a tip from you guys today. I'm actually going to ask for a reason. So I want you to put that in your brain. What's one, if you could only give the humans one reason to do events. I'll go Justin first since you're a guest, Max second, and then I'll go third. what's one reason they should start doing or keep doing events in your mind?
Yeah. So the biggest one that just screams at me is you have prospects at every stage of your business that have questions, and you're not giving them a platform to ask those questions.
Yeah, drop the mic. Which is funny because you say that and I'm like, then why don't we have longer Q&A sessions at the end? But anyway, Max, go ahead.
Community building is important. This is probably the best way to do it.
Yeah. And for me, I'm going to kind of lean into what you're both saying is like, listen, events are the easiest way to be a happy, helpful human. Like, bottom line, you can care, you can pay attention to details. These apps help you make the process easier. We live in a world of AI where the creation of the content is actually not as difficult as it once was. And so the excuses are gone. Build a community, create events, and then have a process to communicate in an authentic human way, and just do good. Do good with your events.
Can I give a reason of why you should do your events on HubSpot?
Oh, yes. Go for it.
Think about all the other spreadsheets you've killed moving on to HubSpot. And then what I want you to do is I want you to go into your Google Docs and go find your massive, ugly, complicated, disgusting spreadsheet that you still manage all your events on.
I feel like,
go, damn, I could get rid of this one too. Because you can.
Yeah.
Because you can.
That's a wrap. Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy the rest of your day. And thanks for tuning into the Hub Heroes podcast. Okay, Hub Heroes, we've reached the end of another episode. Will Lord Lack continue to loom over the community, or will we be able to defeat him in the next episode of the Hub Heroes podcast? Make sure you tune in and find out in the next episode. Make sure you head over to thehubheroes.com to get the latest episodes and become part of the League of Heroes. FYI, if you're part of the League of Heroes, you'll get the show notes right in your inbox, and they come with some hidden power-up potential as well. Make sure you share this podcast with a friend, leave a review if you like what you're listening to, and use the hashtag HubHeroes Podcast on any of the socials, and let us know what strategy conversation you'd like to listen into next. Until next time, when we meet and combine our forces, remember to be a happy, helpful, humble human, and of course, always be looking for a way to be